We are working in section 1.5 and we are only going to do fractions in this section. So if you're looking for the whole numbers, the variables, or the decimals, you need to go back to the previous video. To add or subtract fractions, you first have to get a common denominator. Once you get that common denominator, you're going to combine terms across the top, and then you're going to place whatever result that is over the common denominator. In our first fraction, we already have a common denominator. It's 3/11ths plus 5/11ths. Since we already have a common denominator, we're going to keep that denominator. Notice I brought the 11 straight over. I didn't add them. When you add or subtract fractions, you do not add the denominators. You just keep the common denominator. Combining my terms across the top, I have 3 plus 5. That would give me 8. And my answer is 8/11ths. Our second problem gives us 1 over 2 plus 3 over 8. 1/2 plus 3/8. We have to get a common denominator. The common denominator for this problem is actually 8. Some of you might have chosen to use the number 16, and that would work just fine. Since 8 is smaller, that's what I'm choosing to use. I need to turn both of these denominators into an 8. So my first fraction says 1 over 2. To turn 2 into an 8, I'm going to multiply it by 4. If I multiply by 4 on the bottom, I have to multiply by 4 on the top. My second fraction is 3/8. Since it already has the 8 in the denominator, I don't have to do any work to it. Simplifying my first fraction, this would give me 4 over 8. My second fraction is 3 over 8. And so now I have a common denominator. That common denominator is an 8. Adding across the top, 4 plus 3 would give me 7. So my final answer is 7/8. My next problem is 5/8 minus 7/12. You can always find the common denominator by multiplying the denominators. Since 8 times 12 is 96, 96 would be a good common denominator. It's a little large though, so let me show you how you can find a smaller denominator. If you list the multiples of 8, you would get 8 times 1, which is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 3 is 24. 8 times 4 is 32, and so on. If you list the multiples of 12, you would have 12 times 1 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. 12 times 3 is 36, and so on. The number that is common to both lists is 24, and so that's how you could find your common denominator here. I want to turn both of these fractions into a 24 denominator. My first fraction is 5/8. To turn 8 into a 24, I'm going to multiply it by 3. What you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top, so I'm going to multiply the top by 3 as well. My second fraction is 7/12. I want to turn 12 into 24, so I'm going to multiply it by 2. If I multiply by 2 on the bottom, I have to multiply by 2 on the top as well. So this gives me 15 over 24 minus 14 over 24. And now I have a common denominator, and that common denominator is 24, so I'm going to keep it. Across the top, I'm going to simplify. So 15 minus 14 is 1. My answer here would be 1/24. Looking at our next one, we have to really worry about our sign rules as well. I notice that these two have the same sign, so I'm going to add and keep the sign. I have to also worry about the denominator. You can say that you have a common denominator of 8. Let me backtrack and state the problem. The problem is negative 3/4 plus negative 1/2. If we're getting a common denominator, we're going to get the number 4 because 2 and 4 both go into 4. Some of you might have wanted to use the number 8, and that would be fine as well. If we're changing it to a 4, I would have negative 3/4. That's already a 4, so I don't have to deal with that one. Looking at my other one, negative 1/2, to turn that into a 4, I'm going to multiply the bottom by 2, which also means I multiply the top by 2. So I get negative 3/4 plus negative 2/4. I now have a common denominator of 4, so I'm going to keep that one. Looking across the top, I have negative 3 plus negative 2. Those have the same sign, so I'm going to add and keep the sign, and that would give me a 5, and it's negative. My answer for this problem is negative 5/4. That is an improper fraction, but that is okay. You can leave it as negative 5/4. If you changed it to negative 1 and 1/4, you would still get credit. The last fraction that you see is negative 5/6 plus 1/3. I had to pause for a second, so let me pick back up and start over. We have negative 5/6 plus 1/3. My common denominator here is going to be 6 because 3 and 6 both go into 6. Some of you might have chosen 18. That would be fine as well. To turn both of them into a 6, my first one is already a 6. Great, I'm just going to recopy it. My second fraction is 1/3, so to turn that into a 6, I'm going to multiply by 2, which means I have to multiply on the bottom and the top by 2. So I get negative 5/6 plus 2/6. Now I have a common denominator, which is 6, so I'm just going to bring that over. Simplifying across the top, I would get negative 5 plus 2, and that would give me a 3. But remember, it's a negative 3 because 5 was larger. Negative 3/6 would get you partial credit, but it's not wouldn't give you would give you partial credit, but it wouldn't give you full credit because it's not reduced. So you have to reduce this fraction. In order to reduce it, you have to find what goes both into 3 and 6, and that would be the number 3. That means I can divide my top number by 3, and if I divide my top number by 3, I have to also divide my bottom number by 3. So negative 3 divided by 3 would give me a negative 1, and 6 divided by 3 would give me 2. So that gives me negative 1/2. This concludes our lesson on adding and subtracting the fractions. If you're looking for the variable problems which were on the bottom of your worksheet, you can go back to the video that was posted right before this one.